This week's Parshas Boy, the story of the last set of Makos, the plagues that are being brought about in Egypt in order to make an amazing change in the land of Egypt, which is that Hashem will extract the Jewish people from amidst the Egyptians, remove them from their tasks, and take them out into the desert where they will worship Hashem. These are the statements. We know what's going to happen is they're going to get the Torah in the desert. But these are the statements being made to Parai and to his people that they should listen to these statements alone and not worry about actually what happens. So the interesting thing over here that some of the Mepharshim point out is that there are a couple of places where there's a command to have these ideas repeated to the children. There's two places in the Parsha. The beginning of the Parsha is that Hashem is going to increase the duration and intensity of the Makos in Egypt, and that these Makos, these plagues, will be discussed, or should be discussed, it's a command, with your children, that they should know how Hashem redeemed them from Egypt. And then at the end of the fifth of Aliyah, it repeats the same thing. So at the beginning of the Parsha, it says, I'm going to do these things. It says, L'man tisaper ba'ozne bincha uven bincha es asher hisalalti b'mitzrayim. That I have done these things with Mitzrayim. And Rashi points out the word hisalalti. Hisalalti means that I have made these things happen, but it's like a game. I've made it like a game. And so Rashi points it out, and the Ramban also points out, but not to basically say that they're playing games. The Midrash talks about there being a game, but the idea is that there's a difference between hisalalti and olalti, which is important because the idea is that Hashem is making the things happen here, but at the same time He's not just taking the Jews out, which is the mistake that Moshe Rabbeinu makes at the end of Parshas Shmos. He thinks, I'm going to walk in there and we're going to show him how mighty we are. And Hashem clearly shows that there's more to learn here. There's a lesson that will be repeated over and over again. The idea of repeating a lesson is reiterated towards the end of the fifth Aliyah. It says, Ushmartem es davar hazel l'chagcha l'vanecha ad olam, right? So that you shall guard this thing forever and all eternity, which is what? That when you come to the land of Israel, okay, or to the land, he doesn't specify it, just to be literal here, okay, that Hashem will give you, and you're going to do this. The question that's asked at the Seder itself, Zevach Pesachula Hashem Pasach al Batei Bnei Israel Mitzrayim B'nai Poes Mitzrayim B'nai Hitziel. Direct. These lines are put directly into the Haggadah. That the wise son basically says, what is this service that we're performing? It's a recollection of the events of Egypt. So we're not just telling a story, but we're teaching a lesson as well. Was that these ideas are the experiences of Egypt are the core beliefs of the Jewish people. So why is this so significantly different than every other revolution that occurs in history? Why not just throw out Paro and keep Egypt? Why do we have to be teaching Paro a lesson, teaching the children what that lesson was, and then going to the land that was promised us? What is the difference between every other major revolution and this one? Now, not everybody gets to see a revolution in their lifetimes, Baruch Hashem. I'm not that old. I've seen lots of revolutions. I've seen, just even this year, we've had multiple ones. We've had governments in Africa overturned, declaring their independence. There's governments in Asia where the people are rioting to overthrow the regime. But there seems to be like a big disconnect between the story of our revolution in Egypt and most of the revolutions that occur in other places. Most revolutions are a power struggle. Most revolutions are it's us versus them. We are trying to overpower them. And in the story of Paro as a figure, he doesn't have a special name in the entire Torah. We only know this leader of Egypt is Paro, but when you get to Malachim, every Paro has a different name. And we know these Paros have different names. Why was it always referred to as just Paro? Why is he, even other kings have names in the rest of the Torah? So what's interesting is that there is a common thread amongst the Paros, right? The Paroim, or however I don't even know how you would say that in Hebrew. It ends with a hey. I think it's it's a masculine, so it's Paroim, right? Or the Paro, the Melech Mitzrayim. He's referred to as Paro Melech Mitzrayim. So the constant theme of Paro is that he's always has this feeling of being godlike. We see it even by Yosef, that the Midrash itself, it says over there that they find Paro always standing over the river. And the Midrash makes reference over there that Paro stands over the river. And one of the things that Yosef has to teach Paro in that case is that in order for him to understand his dreams, he has to recognize that he is not the one determining destiny. And so when our Paro of our story doesn't know Yosef, this is a lesson that has to be repeated. Because the previous Paro understood Hashem was the master of the world, and if you want your citizenry to survive, you should listen to the message. So the revolution that was occurring in Egypt was not to show how strong Hashem was. Of course Hashem can take the people out. He says, I want them to see how powerful I am. But it was not to end Egypt. It was not to destroy Egypt. It was to get them to learn to be better. And those lessons are the ones that are continuously passed on. Revolution shouldn't be a power struggle. Everyone should learn to be better. The question is whether or not they learn to be better or not. And the difference between a prophet and a leader of a revolution is that the leader of the revolution wants to lead. Moshe Rabbeinu would rather be left alone tending the sheep. And in a way, that's also kind of what David HaMelech's story is. He wanted to be left alone tending the sheep, but they go find him. He has all these brothers who could possibly do it, but that's not the leader. And the biggest downfall of most revolutions is the fact that when it becomes a power struggle, you're going to always see the strong crush the weak until basically the strong decide, we don't feel like fighting for this anymore. We're not getting paid to fight for this anymore, or we're gonna switch sides and join the people who are being crushed because we think it might be better if we get deposed this guy. So with all that being said, the greatest lesson we see from the plagues is not so much alone the power that Hashem exhibits, but it's the fact that he uses the power to make the people of Egypt better. We see in next week's Parsha that lesson is not learned. But for right now, that's what we're trying to get across. The idea is that when you are trying to revolutionize a country, what you really are trying to do is make the leadership and the citizenry better. And that's really a big revolution. That's the biggest change. Can we be better? Can we make ourselves better? Or are we simply going to be lost to the sands of time with nothing to remember us by? In many ways, there are so many civilizations that while they have left their mark on modern civilization, they no longer exist. And in many ways, when they no longer can exert any more power, they no longer feel the need to continue to send their message anymore. That's not the example of the Jewish people. The message has always been clear. It doesn't matter where we are, what we do. But the message itself continues on generation to generation. And the Pesach Seder is an obligation that goes no matter where we are, whether we are in Yerushalayim and we're sitting in the Beis HaMikdash and we are enjoying some roasted goat meat as a result of having the Karban Pesach, or and wrapping it in a matzah, or making a matzah sandwich, depending on how we want to make matzah, or if we're going to just continue to pass that message on to all the nations around us. And I think that's the most important point of the Parsha, is that all these things that they're trying to experience is really for their benefit. You have to sometimes experience what it means to cross the line and receive punishment so that you can learn to be a better person. And so the message of our Parsha that I would say that everyone should take away is that something revolutionary behaviors not only change the power structure, but they change the people themselves. Good Shabbos.